Just to introduce myself then, my name is Ruth Knight, and I have been, now I'm going to turn this on, let's see, okay. My background is I'm a former nurse, a former youth worker. I've worked in the non-profit sector for all my life, and I was managing organisations and working in many different sectors when I decided that probably I needed to go back to uni and sort of further my skills, and I was getting very interested in management, and so found out about QUT and the Centre of Philanthropy and Non-Profit Studies here at Gardens Point, and so joined up there and what then became the master. I qualified with a master's, which is crazy for me because I never intended really to do a master's. And when I finished that, I also left full-time work to be a mum. And you know what you do, you start twiddling your fingers. I know that doesn't really happen when you're a mum, but I was getting itchy fingers to study again. And so I rang up who is now my supervisor and said, you know, I'm thinking of doing something else. What do you do after a master's? And within the week, he signed me up for a PhD. And so I've been studying at QUT for about 8 years now, and if any of you are interested in furthering your studies at QUT, come and talk to me afterwards and I'll tell you a little bit more about CPNS. But and now I run a consultancy, so basically I don't work with any one organisation, I work across a lot of organisations. And I particularly like working with organisations around change management, because that's what my PhD is in. I also like looking at culture and training organisations and training employees. But I do a lot of research now, and I do a lot of evaluations, and I do all sorts of things. But when I came to QUT, when I was thinking about doing a PhD, I thought, you know, what could I do? Because you've got to spend 4, 5, 10 years of your life studying sort of one thing. And there are so many things that I would like to study. I was just like, you know, I'm one of these people, I just got my fingers in so many pies in different areas. And my supervisor at the time said, well, what's the key thing that you think is important for non-profit organisations right now? And this was 4 years ago. And I said, I think the biggest thing that we need to support organisations with is change, because there is so much change going on, and it affects everybody. It affects employees, it affects volunteers, ultimately it affects our clients and our community. So if we can empower teams, if we can teach leaders and managers how to cope with change and manage change well, then I think, you know, we'd be onto a good thing. And that's why I signed up to look at culture and change management within the non-profit sector. So I'm soon going to finish that, hopefully. Just got to get around to, you know, writing the final thesis, but yeah, so I'm a busy academic, and I suppose what I really wanted to say was that, you know, a lot of change has happened in my life. And if anybody's over about 15 here, you've either been through some deaths, births, marriages, divorces, you know, something like that. You've all probably experienced change in your own life, and studying is just one of those things that can happen. So yeah, I like to really, because I'm a practitioner, I really like to understand the theory and then try and relate it to how it's going to work in practice. And that's what I'm going to work with you today, because I know that you're all practitioners and you're all working in different organisations and sectors and QUT. So today I really want to make sure that this is valuable to you as a practitioner. But I am going to give you a little bit of theory as well to see how that might apply to you. You can have a look at my website. If you go to zarkconsultancy.com, check out my website, and one of the things that I do is that I do free practice guides. I found this most helpful for the sector, to give them very short, snappy overviews of different subjects. They're all free to download, and you can use them with your staff, you can use them in team meetings, and there's all sorts of subjects up there. And if you have anything that you would like me to do a practice guide around, then just email me. But go onto my website and check it out, and if you sign up to my email list, which I might actually put you on anyway, you'll get my new ones straight to your inbox. So those free practice guides, I try and do them monthly or bi-monthly. So who are you then? Well, we've got a great mixture of organisations today. So we've got Wesley. Anybody from Wesley here? Yay, hi, welcome. Lifeline Community Care. Got a few Gold Coast and Brisbane people. Children's Cancer Support, I don't think I hear yet. QT, a few people from QUT, welcome. Youth Emergency Services, welcome. Salvation Army, is she here yet? There was a few people coming. No, they might still be on their way. Pickabeen Community Association, welcome. Access Arts, is she here yet? No. Queensland Health, I know we had, yes, welcome. Queensland Shows, Mark. And Strategic Grants, welcome. Okay. So quite a range of organisations here today, and I hope that you're going to meet each other and do a little bit of networking and a little bit of discussion with each other about your different organisations and the types of change that you're going through. But let me just ask you, how many of you are actually in the midst of change? Change is happening at work. All of you? Just about, yes, okay. How many of you consider yourself leaders or managers of change? So you've actually got some responsibility to make sure that this change happens. Okay, most of you, okay. And how many of you are affected by the change as well? How many of you change is affecting your role and your position as well? Okay, again, most of you, all right. So because what we're going to do today is we're not going to talk particularly about change management, because that's a really huge subject and that's really my 2-day workshop. But what we're going to talk today is about how people respond to change and the various ways that people cope with change. Because as leaders and managers who are responsible for making sure that change happens successfully, this I feel is the critical thing that you need to know. Because you can design all the strategies and processes and plans in the world, but they're not very good unless you understand how people are going to respond to them and if you involve people and engage people. So today I hope that this is going to be valuable to you as you consider how you're responding to change, because you all just said, pretty much all of you said you're going through change. So I'm going to let it be a little bit experiential and let you consider how change is affecting you, and then you can see and consider how that might be affecting your employees, your staff, your volunteers. Okay? That sound okay? All right. We're going to touch on resistance to change. We're going to do that mainly after the coffee break this afternoon. And then we're going to sort of wrap up. So I'm going to do a little bit of theory with you first up in the first hour. And then the final hour, we're really going to look at, so what are the really practical things that you can take away from this theory? What is it that you can implement yourself in your organisations that are going to help people cope with change? And we'll look at resistance to change and see whether that's a good thing or a bad thing in your organisation. Is that all right? Excellent. Okay, good. All right. So now you've all got a coloured piece of paper. So I'd like you to take your coloured piece of paper and I'd like you to write, Dear Ruth. No worries, Melanie, come in. Have a seat here. There you go. Welcome. We're just starting. So write Dear Ruth at the top. Welcome. There's a seat here. Did you grab your, there's a thing with your name outside? Just grab that. Yes, if you didn't have a coloured piece of paper, tell me. Now, what I'd like you to do is write Dear Ruth at the top, because this is going to be your memo to me. I would like you to use this over the course of the afternoon to write down any questions that you have that you don't have time to ask or you don't feel that we're covering now. I want you to write some insights for me about, you know, what's good about this afternoon and what's not so good. So I really want to know your feedback. But I also want you to write anything that you feel that I need to know about you or your organisation or how this workshop is affecting you or how it's helping you. So I want it to be, you know, both constructive criticism but also real good feedback for me, and to make sure that this has been valuable to you this afternoon. All right, so you can use that for this afternoon, and then at the end of today, I will ask you to hand that in to me. Okay? All right. So John Kotter, who's one of the kind of gurus of change management, who's written a lot on change management, said that no organisation is immune to change. Does anybody agree with that statement? Has anybody worked in an organisation where there's been no change? No? Okay. It would be probably very sad if there was. And we know that organisations who don't change, what happens in those organisations? If a change...
Stagnate and die.
Stagnate and die, absolutely. Welcome. There's a seat down here in the front. Come and sit down here and join this group here. Yes, they stagnate. What else happens in organisations that aren't willing to change and don't change? What have you seen it?
They don't evolve.
They don't evolve.
They lose business.
Lose business.
The competitors go past them.
Because they're not responding to change, are they? The changing needs of. Who are the changing... Who's changing? Customers? Your clients?
Technology.
Yes. The community? Your funders? The world is changing, isn't it? All the time. Technology is changing. I think I read that every 3 minutes a new innovation is copyrighted, you know? So basically the world around us is changing, the community is changing, our customers and our clients are changing, their needs are changing, and if we are not responsive to that change, then we can definitely get left behind. And the cost to organisations can be massive. There can be burnout, low morale, high turnover, low job satisfaction, people don't feel challenged, people don't feel supported, people feel that they want to leave the organisation, and that can ultimately mean that your organisation dies because you're not responding to the needs of the people that, or your stakeholders. So no organisation is immune to change. It's happening whether we like it or not. And I just wondered, what are some of the drivers that are happening in for you right now? What is prompting change in your organisation? Can anybody tell me?
Funding.
Funding, absolutely, massive one.
Continuous improvement.
Continuous improvement. We're told to change, aren't we? We're told that this is a good thing to evaluate what we're doing all the time and to try and change and become better at what we do. So we're kind of, there's a responsibility there to change. What else is driving change in your organisations?
The growth in need.
The growth in
need.
In need? Okay, yes. So the needs of the community are growing and changing.
We've just had the Fair Work Australia Modern Award.
Yes.
And that's not because we need to align salaries to this. That's not a hole in our budget.
Yes.
So we're having to restructure and reconsider how we deliver, what we deliver to whom.
Yeah. So legislation and politics. Was somebody going to say that? You know, politics and legislation and the responsibilities that we have as organisations and as management that are driving that change that we cannot ignore most of the time. We'd like to be able to ignore all that paperwork that we're asked to do all the time. Health and safety and... What else? What else is driving change in your organisation? Sustainability, yeah. Being able to survive in this very competitive environment. We're not encouraged... Well, we're encouraged to be collaborative and, you know, work together, and then they put out competitive tenders. And so, you know, and there's only so many donors and there's only so many philanthropists, you know, and so we're looking for ways that we can stand out from the crowd, so to be able to attract that funding and to be able to attract those donors. And they're always looking for new things to fund, and yeah, that's the non-profit sector, and it is the public sector as well, that we're always looking at, you know, who's going to fund what, and we're having to shape ourselves. Anything else? What's driving change in your organisation?
Staff morale, I guess, within our organisation has led a process of needing change.
What the staff want, that's right. And also maybe the management style. If a new manager or a new CEO walks into your organisation, suddenly, whoa, everything's changing, isn't it? Because we all have our own style of doing things and our own way of doing things, and staff do as well. So you can sometimes get a whole different group of staff, or even 1 or 2 new staff members, and things can change because of the way people approach their work or services. And especially if you get new funding as well, and people think, you know, you're going to set up a new service or something like that, or you're trying to do something new in your organisation, and you get new people in, that can affect how you do your work. Yeah, people have all got their own ideas, and their way is always best, isn't it? Okay, have you all got notepaper? Yeah, because I'm going to ask you to make a few notes about what these drivers of change are. So here are some of the drivers for change. Maybe write down a couple that you identify with in your organisation. The need for greater productivity, research and that need for continuous improvement, demands for greater transparency and accountability, new technology or innovation, the consumer or the community, funding or funders, new leadership or politics, and of course competitive tendering as well. So these things are driving change in our world, I would say, you know, because it's not just non-profits, it's not just public, it's across the whole sector with businesses as well. All of these things are demanding change from us. So really, if you're breathing, you're experiencing change. If you're working in an organisation, you're probably experiencing change. Now, there could be many other things as well, so these are some of the key things. And I wonder, you know, how many of this is imposed on us, or how much is chosen? You know, we choose to change. What do you think the percentages are around how much change is imposed on us, or how much we choose to change?
Depends what organisation you work for, and whether you're a consumer company or whether you're a client.
So it depends from your perspective, yeah. So it could be that you're an employee and you feel that a lot is imposed on you, or it could be that you're the new manager or the new CEO and you've got some great new ideas and you want to bring in some new ways of doing things, so you choose to implement some change. So it can be different, and you're right, it's definitely around the perspective that you have and the role that you have in your organisation, and it might be different for every one of you. So the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about was something that sort of the founder of change management came up with. He came up with this idea, Kurt Lewin, who suggested that the change is created through some driving forces. First of all, you get your driving forces for change, and these are the positive ones that are saying, yes, we need change, we want change, this is going to be positive and good. And then they're restrained by these other forces, which are the not so good reasons for change, the reasons why people resist change. And Lewin said that in actual fact, good change is a balance of these driving forces. That if you get too much aggressive, we're going to do this change and it's going to happen and let's march, okay, let's do it, and there's no resistance, that can actually mean that things get forgotten, they're not always positive, ends up not always positive change, you know, there can be sort of downfalls in that. But of course, we don't want it all to be resistant either. So if it's all about resisting the change, then of course, change can't happen, and we need change. So he suggested that this line here is the critical point at where good change, successful change happens, where the driving force is for change and the reasons why we resist change come together and fit nicely. So I'd just like you to have a quick think about what type of forces are going on in your team or your organisation right now. What are the reasons why change is happening? You've made a little bit of a list about whether that might be positive or negative. And then what are the reasons why change is being resisted? Let's have a think. Why do you think change might be resisted?
Fear.
Fear. Yes?
And lack of understanding.
Lack of understanding.
Lack of skills.
Lack of skills and knowledge.
Lack of support.
Lack of support. Funding. Absolutely. Why else? Why are people resisting all of this change? Or, and that's not, you know, might not even be actively resisting. Tradition. Absolutely. We've done this like this for 40 years or for how many years? The status quo. You know, we don't want to rock the boat. We were fearful of what this might mean for us and our organisation. But in actual fact, most people are fearful about what it means for them, because we're in the midst of this change. And any change going on around us can affect us in some ways. And if we're not quite sure how it's going to affect us, that's why we then may resist it. So, who likes change in this room? Who would say, I like change. Change is good. Come on, let's see. We've got yeah, okay. So we've got about 80%. Okay. People who generally say they like change often talk about or think about change in positive ways. They say, you know, it energises them or excites them. They get learning from it, or they're risk takers. They can consider change a challenge, or, you know, allows them to be creative. Now, these are the people, you know, who are generally, you know, entrepreneurs, risk takers. You know, they're the types of people who don't mind the fact that sometimes their status quo could be rocked, or, you know, their fear of the unknown is more an adventure than anything. Who doesn't like change? Come on, be honest.
If you rephrase it to who's afraid of change, I can put my
Yeah, okay.
like change, but
Okay, all right. You've just helped me out in some research there, which I'll tell you in a moment, because I'm doing a little bit of research with you right now. But let me just tell you first that often people who say they don't like change are people who have you know, thoughts and memories about change that when it hasn't been so good. So it could be around fear, stress, frustration, confusion. It could be unstabilising, and definitely it may create some loss and grief. And so when we're frightened of what that means for us, that's when it can mean, I don't like change. I actually like stability. I like to know. Now, the truth is that most people like change, but they fear what it's going to mean for them. That's a very natural reaction. And of course, I'm just saying change. And I mean, you could say, well, I like this change, but I don't like this change. Yeah. I like change at work, but I don't like change at home. Or, you know, I like change when I'm in this role, but I don't like change when I'm in that role. So there's lots of factors going on about when we like change and when we don't. So I just wanted to ask you a question. Why did you sit in the seat that you're sitting, except you two who that's right, you're not allowed to answer.
Because I always do as I'm told.
Okay, all right, so you're a, yes, okay, passive complier. Okay, you came a little bit late too, which meant that you couldn't really choose particularly.
I walked around this building. Level 2, you know, that's a car.
Ah, I said level 2, you're right, I said level 2 on the flyer, and it was level 12, which I put on the email. So there you go. I created some change there, but most of you. So those of you who came in earlier, who had a bit of a choice about where you were going to sit, why did you sit there?
It seemed cooler.
Good.
And it gave me good vision. You know.
Okay, so it gave you good vision, felt cooler, felt the right spot. You were feeling safe right there. Okay. Who else? What else about you guys? You came in.
If I sat on that side of the table, I'd probably have to crick my leg
Yes.
slightly to look at the screen.
Because we
Whereas
were
here I'm
early.
looking directly.
You're looking
We're
directly?
early, so we've got like front
Because
and
we're
centre.
Middle of the room.
We were still talking about work as well, so we used it as an opportunity. We
To
don't
sit
always.
together.
To sit together. So you felt safe because you were with people that you know. You didn't kind of say, hey, let's split up here. let's challenge ourselves.
A group conversation, so it was just like.
So the reality is that if I asked you, it was probably because you picked the place that you were going to feel most safe and comfortable. Who walked in the room and said, right, where am I going to really challenge myself today to sit? You know, where am I going to be able to, where I can crick my neck and talk to someone I don't know and feel a bit hot and bothered and not see the screen? Did anybody do that? No. We don't. Our natural reaction is to want to feel safe and want to feel comfortable. And so we pick the situations, we pick the environment, we pick the seat that's going to give us that most comfort. When we're challenged, and now if I said to you now, guess what guys? We're all going to move chairs. Now, would that challenge anyone? Because you look like you're pretty settled, you know? You got your things all over the table, you got your name. Now, who hasn't done their names? Can you pull out your names and make your little name badges? I forgot to say that. This table will get top marks here. You're ready to go. So, who would feel uncomfortable? Like, what would it feel like if I said to you right now, guess what, Marie? We're going to actually change you now. Sorry, I want you to move over this side. How would that feel to you?
Well, I've been lots of places before where that's been done and it's been gone again.
Yeah. So you're a passive complier, like you, okay. Would anybody just say, no, I really don't want to do that because that's really going to crick my neck, that's really going to put me in an uncomfortable position. Would anybody really want to say no? Yeah? You'd feel like, no, I don't really, you know, Ruth.
I'd want to know what the point was.
You'd want to know what the point was, absolutely. People want to know the rationale for change. And that's one of the key things for you as team leaders and managers. That when you're introducing change, one of the first questions that will come up is why? Why are we doing this? Because we want to know that there's a reason. Because if you're going to change my status quo, if you're going to challenge me, if you're going to put me in a position where I may not be as comfortable as I am right now, I want to know why. So that's one of the first questions they ask. Now, what if I said to you, okay, guys, we're going to move seats, and I've actually decided exactly where you're going to sit. So I want you to go here, Eddie. I want you to go to that seat. How, again, would that feel to you if I started to actually start directing you, not so that you could choose, but actually I was going to determine where you were going to sit? How would that feel? Pardon? A bit awkward as well. Yeah, because you'd start again thinking, hang on a minute, what's the agenda here? Why is she actually forming us into specific groups? Why have I got to follow her instructions? And it might be that most of you don't know me very well. And you've met me for 10 minutes now. Do you trust me enough to go with what I'm saying?
So I would go back to, it's what's at risk. Moving across there probably isn't going to disturb me a significant amount. I'd go 2 rooms away, then I might start to consider, I'm not sure I like this anymore.
Yeah. So again, you're starting to think about, how's this affecting me? Why am I doing it? What kind of, is this putting me in a challenging position? And do I want to do that? Are those restraining and factors, which one's winning? And this is the question, let's just go back there. So with any type of change, whether it be just change seats or change jobs or change organisations or change the way that you do things, change your position description, whatever it might be, it doesn't matter whether it's a small change or a big change. There's always this going on in your mind about what's the reason and the benefits for this change to occur and why shouldn't I? What are the restraining factors? Why is this a reason to just say no or to say, hey, I'm not happy about this? It's always going on, these driving forces. Okay. So they say that there are kind of 3 types of people that are how you respond to change. You could either be the supporter, the ambivalent, or the opponent. And I think if you thought about the people in your team now, you might be able to detect who, really fits into which category. Now, across all 3, if you can imagine a line, You can have from active through to passive. Okay, so the supporter could be the person who goes, yeah, okay, all right. So they're quite passive about it. They'll just do what they're told, you know, but they kind of generally agree that it's probably a good idea. And then you get those really change champions who go, yes, this is awesome. You know, I've been waiting for this change to happen. You know, yes, let's do it. You know, those really active change champions. You also have the ambivalent people who, again, can be from passive to active. So they might, or they're more the passive people who kind of just go, yeah, another change. Here we go again. I've learnt to comply. I'm just going to see what happens. A lot of people don't even believe it sometimes. You know, when you hear so much gossip or communication about change that might or might not happen, you sometimes let it go over your head because you think, is it really going to happen? So those are the ambivalent types. So they're not change champions, but they're not real resistors either. And then you get your opponents, who again can be passive or active. So the types of people who might be passive opponents, what types of things do they do? If you're an opponent but you're not really going to be too verbal about it, what do they do? Sabotage, yes. What else do they do? Think about people that you know or in your organisation that wouldn't really say anything to your face, but you know that they're not really a...
They'd spread the fear about the change.
Spread the fear, a lot of gossip.
Cause low morale.
Low morale. Negative talk maybe all the time, putting it down. Why are we doing this? This is stupid.
Seen it all before.
Seen it all before. And they might do that just in sort of little groups or with just individual people. They might not actually say it in a team meeting, or they might not say it to a manager, or they might not say it openly, but you know that they're talking about it. And we're actually going to talk after coffee a lot more about the types of ways that people can resist change. But I just wanted to give you that sense of there are these three different types of reactions to change, and you can be active or passive. So it is wrong to suggest that people don't like change. Most of you, 80% of you said, yeah, look, we do like change. We do want change. Let me ask this question. Who needs change in your organisation? Most of you? So most of you would say, yeah, look, change is actually needed in our organisation. So most people think and want change. People tend to support change when they can see and believe in the potential benefits. When when you feel the value of that change is actually going to benefit you and you know why that change is happening. What people don't like is change imposed on them, especially if they've had no warning or they don't understand why they're being told that change needs to occur. And that's why communication is so important, so important. The type of communication, the consistency of communication, the honesty of communication, because bad communication can actually have the reverse effect. You know, we can try and communicate to people that they're going to change, but if you give them little bits or wrong bits, or people start losing trust because they think, well, actually, you're telling us that change is happening, but you're still not really telling us why, or we don't actually trust the reason that you're saying why. You're saying it's about continuous improvement, but in actual fact, we just think that you're trying to save some money, so it's got to be the right communication, and then it's got to be consistent communication, and it's got to be communication that actually is trustworthy and people can believe in and feel is honest communication. So what are the results if you don't do this? Well, Woodward and Hendry did some research around it, and they said that poor communications, poor at work relationships, low engagement, poor skills and experience, and low motivation to make that change are all factors that employees identified are barriers to absorbing and coping with change. So when you are identifying that there's low morale at work and you try then to go and implement some change, you are already giving yourself a big headache. All right? You're already trying to create some sort of change that you're going to have resistance against, because there's already low morale happening, and poor might be other things as well, like poor communication, poor skills. So it might be that you need to do some preliminary work with your team before you even suggest that you're going to change something. But we tend to go, right, change has got to happen, let's go, next team meeting, we're going to tell them how we're going to do some new things, you know, we're going to introduce some, you know, new ways of doing things, or we're going to change people's job description. And we forget that there's actually all this preliminary work that needs to probably be done, which might take a little bit of work, or it might be just some communication, or it might be just, you know, talking to people about how they're going and talking to them about why change needs to happen, and then leading them into the process of, okay, now we're ready. Now people's minds are open to the fact that change does need to happen. So it's that engagement process that might need to happen. But too often, us as team leaders and managers, we just feel, oh, directive, let's go, let's just make everybody change. And then we wonder why people are resistant to change, and why they're not doing it, or why it's unsuccessful. So there are generally there are three kinds of change. I'd like you to write this down. Developmental, transitional, and transformational. Who knows what developmental types of change are? Can anybody tell me what that type of change is?
So that's could be biological, or it could be learned. So if you are a student and you're learning, you'll become developmentally more insightful as you finish your degree, and developmentally it's biological.
Yeah, it's on those lines. Basically what it means is it's small types of change. So it's, you know, slightly changing the way we do things. It's not changing the whole process, but it's just sort of tweaking the way you do things. So it might be that you have an intake form and your manager says, hey, look, you know, we're going to just tweak it a little bit and we're going to do it slightly differently. So it's that developmental type of change that means we're not transforming or doing things completely different, we're just changing it slightly.
As an implication
Yeah.
of organic.
Organic, yeah, okay, yeah. It might be that you're told to do it, but it's those smaller types of change that can sometimes even be missed as change. It kind of is just so part of you just growing in your job and your organisation and what's happening. So what do you then think transitional is? A step up from that. Pardon?
Just a bit bigger change than the
Yes.
obviously, yeah.
It's really then saying we're going to do a whole new type of intake form. Yeah, so it's actually transferring one way of doing things with another way. So it's sort of what I call medium type of change. You know, it's not changing your job description, but it might be changing a process or changing. So it really does need a lot more skills and thought and you know, contemplation about that change. And then transformational, then you might guess, is that big type of change. This is saying we're going to change the culture of this organisation, or we're going to completely change the services that we're doing, or we're going to completely change our thinking about something that we do with our clients or our customers, okay? So we've got the three types of change. The smaller type of change, the organic type of smaller process type of change, the transitional change where it's really, you know, changing a type of process or the way that you do things. And then transformational change is really becoming a new person or really changing your job into completely something different. How many of you experience developmental change in your job regularly? Yeah, very common. How many of you have to deal with transitional changes? Yep. Quite often. And how many of you are going through transformational change? Whoa, okay. So quite a lot as well. Okay, now what happens is, and you've just proven it there, is that these three can all happen in tandem. This can all be going on at the same time. How do you think people, how do you think people feel when all these different types of changes are happening at once?
Blown away.
Blown away, overwhelmed, tired, disorganised.
Yeah.
Stressed, absolutely.
I think it can be enthused as well.
Pardon?
Enthused.
Enthused? Okay, if you can see some opportunity in that, okay. Let me just give you a tiny little example of what it can feel like when you get a lot of these changes together. Who'd like to be a volunteer? Just, it's not a hard job. Come up here, Mick. Okay, so I'm your manager, Mick. You stand over there. You're not allowed to move, okay? Because this is representing distance and space, okay? Now, what I've got here, Mick, is a lot of change that needs to happen in our organisation, okay? You ready for some change? Yeah? Yeah. Come on, there's opportunities in change, all right? You ready? Yep. Let's go. Okay, so we've achieved that. Okay, another change? Okay, how's it feeling?
Yeah, good.
Good, yeah, feeling cope. Okay, got a little bit more change. All right, you ready? How did that feel?
Yeah, that was challenging.
Okay, how do you think that would feel if we use that analogy in the workplace?
Yeah, you just wouldn't know which one to grab.
Yeah, because you couldn't focus on all of these types of change at once. The result was chaos. The result was maybe you felt overwhelmed. You know, help, what is she doing? All of this change. And it's very hard as a manager to now feel enthusiastic about passing that change on to your team, isn't it? Mm. Because if you're feeling chaotic and overwhelmed and, you know, hang on a minute, all of these responsibilities to cope with all this change, how would you then be able to pass on and be, you know, a change champion to your team? Thanks, Mick. No, that's great. Just a little analogy there. Thank you. Thank you. So that's how some people can feel when there's a lot of change going on at once. And of course it is perspective. You know, some people cope very well. They feel that they're, you know, just being able to focus on one change at a time. But very often it feels like so many changes are happening all at once. And now all of my changes were the same size. But what if I had thrown in a few different size balls there? And some of them were little balls like that, but some of them were big ones as well. That would be even harder, wouldn't it? To know which was your priority, which could I cope with? How do I not feel overwhelmed with this change? Okay. Now, very quickly, before we go into a little bit of discussion in groups, see how we're doing. I'd like you to also write this down. I have got note paper if anybody forgot any note paper. You need some. This is often called the change curve. And it's a way of actually understanding the reactions that somebody can go through when they're having this change thrown at them or given to them. They tend to believe that the first thing that people do is they have a reaction to that change. So it could be that they're fearful, they're worried, they're anxious. It might be that they're excited, but they're not sure why. But lots of questions, really, about the change at this point. When people have eventually had their reaction, it can be any length of time. This is not, you know, a day or a month or 2 minutes. You know, this can be different for whatever change or person that's experiencing this change. Then you go into resistance. And most people say, hang on, I'm not sure I want this to happen. Hang on a minute, is this going to benefit me? Hang on a minute, why is this happening? So most people go into resistance for a period of time. Some people get stuck there and can't move out of it. But most people, at some point, when they've had their questions answered, when they know that they can't resist any longer, or when they've decided that they're going to comply, or they've decided that, hang on a minute, actually, maybe this would be good change, then they're able to move on to exploration. And that's when they start, you know, mentally, emotionally, physically start saying, okay, well, maybe there is some benefits for me. Maybe now I understand why this change is happening. Maybe now I should support the change, etc. Lots of feelings and emotions going on there. And then eventually onto commitment. And that's when change becomes embedded now. You've tried your new form. you've tried your new job description, or you've tried your new desk, or you've tried the new way of doing things. And this is when you say, yep, okay, we're either going to do this, you know, we are going to do this. This is the way of the future. And again, that can have lots of emotions connected to that part, but usually it's a more of a compliance, getting back to that status quo. Okay, this is the new way that we're going to be doing things. So can you imagine that people go through a massive emotions in those 4 stages? Have any of you been through some significant change? Do you recognise that you've been through lots of changes, emotions? I was speaking to someone just earlier who was just telling me about a change that she's had recently, and saying, 1 minute I was excited, 1 minute I was like, yes, and then the next minute I was like, no, okay, you know. So sometimes even within a day, you can go through all these different types of emotions. But what we want to help our team with is to get through that as safely and as quickly as we can, because commitment is really where we want to lead people. Now, just very quickly before we talk about that, Pierre Collerette and some other researchers talked about the fact that we go through an awakening stage. So this is, change is going to happen, we get so it's kind of that reaction and resistance stage of like change is going to happen. We go through a period of transition, which is talking about, you know, coming to the understanding that change is going to happen and what this means for us, and through to ritualisation. So again, embedding that change in our thoughts and in our feelings and in our behaviour. Loup and Koller, I'm just really whipping over this to kind of just get you to understand that there's different types of theories out there about these change phases. Loup and Koller said that we start with awareness and understanding. We either go to belief and then commitment, or we might go into resistance and then down to compliance. And there can be all sorts of different pathways through those different types of responses to change. And again, this can all be very positive for us or very negative for us. Bridges, I highly recommend you reading his book, William Bridges, around transitions. And he said that it's not the change that does you in, it's the transition. And he suggests that all change starts with an ending. It starts with letting go of something. Now just think in your own lives right now, some change that's happened for you. Did it start with an ending? Did it start with losing something? Yeah. It usually does. I think that's true. If we really think about it, we don't often realise, sometimes it's unconscious. We don't think about it as grief and loss and losing something. But if we reflect on it, then we realise, yeah, I was losing my security, or I was losing my pay, or I was losing my confidence, or I was losing my partner, or I was losing, you know, something. There was something that you were losing in that process of change. And William Bridges talks about the neutral zone being a very dangerous place, because it's either the place for opportunity or really being resistant and it really negatively affecting us. And he said it's not until we get through this neutral zone and get through to the stage of the new beginning, which is where we realise, okay, this change is really important to us. Okay, so what I'd like you to do, we're going to do a quick little exercise in your groups. In fact, we might do it in maybe 2s or 3s. Okay, we'll do it in 2s or 3s. So split up on your tables. You can just with the person next to you, or you can go and meet someone new if you like. What I want you to do for 10 minutes is just think about 2 to 3 different types of workplace change that's going on for you right now. And hopefully you all drew that little box. I want you to think about what type of change it is and where you would place yourself right now in here, in that change curve. Where are you on this journey?
Us as individuals, or
yeah, you as individual. So think about a change, or 2 or 3 if you want, because usually there's different types of changes that are going on at work. Think if you can describe whether it's a developmental, a transitional, or a transformational change, and then place yourself on that journey somewhere. Okay. Sounds like there's lots of change going on in your organisations. So, did all of you manage to think about what type of change that you're going through right now, where you might be sitting on the change curve? What was that like? Tell me some reactions to that. Was that interesting? Was it insightful?
Yeah, we've got similar changes we're going through, you know, in 2 different associations, and we're at different points at that change.
Yeah. Yep. Did you have different feelings where you were, so you were sitting on that curve differently, but maybe having different reactions and responses to that change? Yep. Anybody else have similarities or differences?
So what I witnessed in taking on my role where I am now is a whole organisation that was going through an enormous transformational change, but done so poorly that it got to the reaction and resistance stage, and it stopped at that line.
Yeah.
It had to, you know, drastic measures had to take place to stop it, because people would not get past the exploration stage because of how the change management had been done.
Very important. All of those change management processes to help people through this curve. Anybody else? Your reaction to that? Was that helpful?
Yeah, I found it really helpful. We had some similarities, but I would just say the trust and building that trust with the team, and spending that time and just checking in with them every day, and I think to just give them a little bit more autonomy in decision making and things. But yeah, it's really interesting.
So to engage people in the process of change can actually be very helpful, even if you can't determine that change is going to happen. You know, if you're told change is going to happen, but it's about working out where you can engage people and at what level. Because I think you can engage people at some point along the process. And it's about working out where is right, you know, not hopefully too late, as early as possible, which is why planning your change management is so important, and getting that communication as successful as you can in the beginning. Because if you do find that people are sitting over here in this reaction and resistance stage, it can be awful hard to move them on, because now they're feeling angry and, you know, resistant, and now they're acting on their resistance. Yeah, so let's just think about this change curve, and some of you might know this, the Kubler-Ross change, the reaction to loss, okay, is one of the most common theories that explain our reaction to change is based on the work of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who did a lot of work a few years ago on people's reaction to death and dying. And we've realised over the years that there's actually what people go through when they're going through change, because these people who are saying that, you know, change begins with a loss. So there's some parallels there, because we have to go through some of those grief and loss, you know, stages to actually move on, and when we realise that change is about something new. The different stages are in fact coping mechanisms that people often use to help them understand, accept and eventually adapt to the loss or the change. It's important to note that Kubler-Ross stated that the stages were not necessarily moved through in order. So I wonder how many of you said, well, I got to this exploration point and then I moved back to resistant. Or I thought we were in commitment, but then something happened and it moved me back to resistance or reaction. So it's not a linear process. It's not like, you know, you have a month to go in this stage and a month to go here. You know, it doesn't work like that, because we're humans. And people can spend different amounts of time in each stage. And this is where it's quite perplexing in teams. As a team leader, you may have, you know, 5 or 6 people in your team, and one person is like, yes, I'm through to commitment, I had all my questions answered, I now, you know, understand why we're doing this change, I'm through, and you've got another person stuck in resistance, and you just can't understand why they're resisting so differently to other people in the team. And it can become quite complexing and frustrating for team leaders and managers who, you know, have to get this change happening, and you've got some people within your team, not everybody, who's stuck in resistance. So this is the, you know, the typical Kubler-Ross curve, which is really that we go from stability to immobilization, that reaction. We often deny that it's going to happen. We stick our head in the sand and go, nah, not another change, just not going to do it, don't want it to happen. Then we might move on to that anger and that reaction and resistance. So no, not another change, and this is bad for our team, and this is not good, and all those questions that come up. Can lead through to bargaining and then depression. So this is now saying, okay, well, if I'm going to change my job description, that means I need more pay, or it means this or that. You know, we start saying, well, if you're going to make me change, then I've got some, you know, little checklist here, you know, and this is what I want. So we start bargaining around how to make that change beneficial to us. It can lead to depression, which, you know, is really, again, that sense of, wow, this is really something different for me. I might not have the skills or the competency to make that change. Especially, you know, has anybody had new software? This is the typical one. You know, you've got to use a new software program or a new, you know, and you go, oh, I don't like computers. I don't know how to use anything different. You know, I've been trained one way. I just can't get my head around this new software, or just even new statistics, or the, you know, the new types of things that you have to do.
I was just going to go back to bargaining in a second, because it's not always about. Sometimes that bargaining is things like, well, I'll work a little harder if we don't have to change, or I'll stay back a little bit later. So sometimes the bargaining is about what you're willing to give up to stay the same, which is a dangerous place to be. It sort of involves fantasy. Yes, that's right, that's right.
So it can involve a lot of things there, and eventually through to testing and acceptance, hopefully. The idea is that that is then a place where you're saying, okay, I've worked out, you know, what this means for me. I've worked out, I've had some training maybe, or I've got some support from my managers. Now we're feeling more comfortable with the fact that this is going to benefit us as a team, as an organisation, and now we're starting to embed that change, and now that's becoming the norm or the status quo. So, you know, the idea is that, again, people have so many different reactions to the change, and they can be along this journey at any point. And it doesn't always happen quickly. And some people, it takes a lot longer than others. Now, I don't think I'm going to go through all of this now, but if any of you want these slides, I can send them to you. But this really just explains, you know, at these different points, how people are feeling. And, you know, you might consider as a manager or as a team leader, how would you support different people in your team at different stages along this journey? Because you might be someone who's in denial, you would have to treat, you know, manage and support very differently to someone who was in the bargaining or the depression stage. You know, you might have to have different strategies to working with those people. And that's where it can become quite complex. And that is why I'm saying change is one of the, you know, real tests for managers. Because you know where you want the team to be, but you've got all these different reactions and responses, and you know, people at different stages of their journey, and you've got to be able to bring them all along with you to this place of acceptance or commitment.
Maybe not all of them.
Sorry?
Maybe not all of them.
Maybe not all of them. Sometimes you have to kick them off the bus. and that is a good point, actually. We're not going to go into that, except, you know, to say that sometimes you'll have people that really can't get past that resistance stage, and that's when you actually have to think about, is this the right place for them? You know, what we really need, because they might be really pulling the whole team down. Because peer pressure and socialisation within teams is massive, is huge, very influential. So if you've got a couple of people stuck in resistance, they're going to infect sometimes the team.
I lost in a whole year, probably nearly, out of the 15 staff, about 12. Because
12.
Of that whole, which isn't really good for childcare. But
No.
at the end of the day, the new team that have come on board and on the bus and the ones who stayed
Yeah.
are really responsive to the children, really passionate, you know, and it's amazing. Like the centre's just turned around in 12 months, but yeah.
And that's change in itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you may start this change process, whenever this was 12, 18 months ago, thinking, oh my goodness, you know, everybody's resistant to change and everybody's unhappy and morale is low. And then people start leaving because who wants to stick around in that? You know, it's not a very happy place to be. So if people start leaving and you're thinking, oh no, now this is creating a whole load more change because we've got new people coming in. But that's your opportunity for fresh, you know, fresh people, fresh eyes who actually are coming into something new anyway. So it's changed for them whether they like it or not. So they might be at a different stage, and now you're saying that you've got a whole new team of very excited people.
The
So
ones who were there are now really shining as well, and they're
Yeah.
doing some leadership stuff. So
Yeah.
it's great.
So the peer pressure and socialisation is massive, which is, I'll go back to that point I made earlier, is that you might need to do some teamwork and team building before you start doing change management. Because getting that right is going to mean everybody's on the same page, you know, before you start introducing change.
We've done it backwards. We actually did team building at the end of it all now, at the end of the year, after all the change has been done.
Okay,
We just celebrated what we've been doing.
that's great. That's great.
And I
And
would have done it in the beginning. I don't even think some of those people would have stayed anyway. They've
Really?
made their minds up, so.
yeah. So people just decide, no, this isn't for me, I don't want to stick around. And that's okay. You know, sometimes you need to give permission to say that's okay. If this change, if you can't get round that this change might be opportunity to you, that's okay. Let's support you in moving on. Let's support you in creating some change that you do accept. Okay, who'd like to do a little bit of change right now? A little bit of experiential stuff. So what I'd like you to do is put all your pens and paper on the tables and stand up and put the seats, the chairs inside, and maybe put your bags under the table a little bit. I'm going to do a little exercise with you to make you work for afternoon tea. So just, put your bags under the table, chairs in. All right. So I want you to imagine that I'm your CEO and you're my team. And I just want to let you know, team, that we're going to introduce some changes to our organisation this afternoon, okay? And I'm just going to brief you on what those changes are. I just want you to look above the red line, first of all, above the red line. So I want to just tell you, the old way of doing things, when I said left, you used to turn left. When I say right, you used to turn right. When I said forward, you used to go forward. And when I used to say back, you used to go back. But hey, guess what, guys? I'm going to introduce some change today. So now when I say left, I want you to go forward. When I say right, I want you to go back. When I say forward, I want you to go right. And when I say back, I want you to go left. Is that okay with everybody? No. Okay. So now, just to give you a little bit of instructions, first of all, there's no talking. Okay, there's no talking in this team. We're going to do it without talking. All right. Left. Right. Left. Back. Right. Forward. Back. Okay, let's just stop there. How's everyone feeling? Confused? How else? You can talk.
Surely there's a policy around this.
There must be a policy around this.
Well, the thing is,
How else?
I reckon what I would do is I'm following. So the moment
Yes.
somebody feels they have taken a leadership role, I'll go with that.
Yeah.
If they've gone the other way on any of those commands, that's exactly
Yeah.
what I would have done.
Okay.
Until a pattern established for us all.
Okay. So what else? So you're following the team. Your socialisation is going on over in this corner. We're looking at what everyone else is doing, and we're just kind of following them. Why are you following other people?
Because you wouldn't let me write down on my hand.
Okay. Yeah. Why else? What was going on over here?
Same thing for
Ones that look confident, like the nutbush.
I was just repeating it in my head so that I could know where to go.
You were trying to concentrate, you were trying to get it right. I could hear over here the kind of, got to get this right, but you said you were...
Didn't know where we were going, what we were doing.
Yeah,
It was
confused.
new.
It was new, it was confusing. Why are we doing this? This is making me look silly. You know, this is, what were you thinking, Mark?
I was pretty happy with how we used to do it.
Now, I'm actually surprised that none of you sat down and said, this is stupid, I'm not doing this. So you're all kind of compliant to a various degree. But did any of you want to? Did any of you just go, I'm not doing this?
I wanted to.
You wanted to, so that you could feel the resistance in you. Anybody else?
No, I figured we'll problem solve our way out of this.
Real problem solve this.
Yeah, I thought if I just stood here,
Yeah.
then I might get it right, but I'll just be resistant because I didn't know which way to go.
And maybe Ruth won't notice that I'm kind of just standing here doing nothing, just pretending. Okay. What we're going to do now then, team, going back into my CEO role, I'd like you to join with another member of the team. Anybody you like, join with them. We're going to do this in pairs now. So I'd like to join with a pair, or three if there's not pairs, let's say. Somebody next close to you. All right. So now you can talk, okay? And we're going to do this as pairs, all right? Okay. Back.
We need a refresher.
Leadership role.
Right.
I don't want to do anything until I have a refresher.
You got to work with your team member. Got to work with your team member. You're all resisting me right now. Work with your team member. Left. Forward. Back. Right. Left. Back. Okay, let's stop it right there. How are you feeling right now?
Rather like the aerobics class.
Aerobics. Okay, how are you feeling about this exercise? What emotions are you going through? What are you thinking?
Yeah, it wasn't.
Still frustrated.
First time, what made you think it was going to work the second time?
Yeah.
No, we just sat down.
You said, oh, you're my total resistors now. Okay, we're opting out, mate. We're leaving that bus.
I was the opposite to that. I was a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
Much more comfortable.
I put a plan in place at the start, and I took my left hand at my back, my right hand at my front, and that
Yeah.
covered all the directions that were there. So.
Good, working out a strategy. There is a strategy to this, okay. So, but working as a team, does it make any difference? No? Depends who your team member is. I didn't reiterate. Okay, yeah, so I didn't go back and I didn't, but at least you were working and you were talking. Did that make a difference, that you were actually communicating with someone?
You felt more supported, even though you're together, so it was like you felt more empowered.
We even said even if we do it wrong, at least we're doing it
together.
That's right, that's right. So even if we muff this up, at least we're doing it together. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so usually, and that's how it happens, is that you've got, again, that peer support or that peer pressure, and you know what, if we're going to muck it up, if we're going to resist, let's do it together, you know, let's sit this out.
But if
Okay.
you think it's a nonsense, though, you shouldn't just participate.
Well, and you know, there is an argument that resistance is a good thing. Because if you're told, and I mean, if you can think of some of the practices that we did even 10, 20 years ago now, and you think, oh my goodness, you know, we were putting people in straitjackets and, you know, doing this and that. And you think about the practices that we have had, even throughout the world and centuries, of, you know, what was going on back then. And, you know, the importance of resisting change. You know, single people have changed the world and how we look at how we do practices by resisting and by saying we need to change things. So there is nothing, you know, like there is a whole good argument to sometimes you need to critically analyse why you're being told to do things. Otherwise there would be some really more scary stuff going on out there with our clients. Okay, well guess what guys? We're now going to make a little bit more change. Okay, and I am going to reiterate, so if you can't see team, stand up and have a look at this. Okay, we're now going to look underneath the line as well. So Old ways, when I used to say sit, you used to sit. When I used to say stand, you used to stand. When you used to clap, you clapped. When I said cross arms, you crossed arms. Now, when I say sit, I want you to clap. Now, when I say stand, I want you to cross arms. Now, when I say clap, I want you to sit. And now, when I say cross arms, I want you to stand. Okay? I've got to find my sheet. Now, I realise that we're in a fairly confined space, so just do this as best as you can, okay? And don't hurt yourselves or other people. So I realise that you are just going to have to improvise a little bit, okay? But I want you to do this best as you can. And you're working in teams again with your partner, okay? Okay, 2 steps forward and sit. Good. 3 steps back and clap. Some of you are doing the old ways. Some of you are slipped back into old ways. No one said you weren't doing new ways. All right, good. Some people are doing it. Cross your arms and then sit. Cross your arms and then clap. Oh. Couldn't help myself. Okay, 3 steps forwards and cross your arms. Stand. Good, girls, good. Stand, then clap. Stand, then clap. Yes, good, girls. Very good, very good. Okay. Stand, then take 3 steps left. Okay, guess what? We're going to just do something different. I'd like you to join with another pair. So we're going to work in 4s. For the last few we're going to work in 4s. So just say hi to your 4s or 5, doesn't matter. Or 6, it doesn't matter. Right, so now you're working in a team. Okay, working in a team. All right, stand and then take 3 steps left. Stand and then take 3 steps left. Good. 1 step forwards and then sit. Cross arms and then clap. It's stand.
Cross each other out.
Yeah. Sit 3 times. 2 steps forward and then stand.
And then stand, so cross arms.
1 step back and then sit a lot. Yes, okay, well done. All right, have a seat, and we'll just talk about that. Well done, well done. So let's just think about that and just, have a little bit of reflection on that. We're making some very small changes, guys. This wasn't transformational changes, although you might say it was. Okay, very small changes. First of all, you weren't allowed to speak and you had to do it all by yourself. How did that feel? Scary, frustrating, embarrassing, silly. Are you going to get it wrong? Don't want to do this. This is silly, okay? Then you were allowed to pair with someone and talk. How did that feel? Bit better, working as a team, we could discuss it, we could talk about it, didn't feel so silly. If we're going to get it wrong, we'll do it wrong together. Felt a little bit more supportive, didn't it? Then we introduced some more change, and how did that feel again?
Because you still had your partner.
Still had your partner, so you were thinking it was more than just, you weren't feeling as alone. No. Yep. By then you'd kind of done this exercise, you realised everybody was joining in, everybody was doing it. We don't feel, you know, Ruth must be doing this for a reason. We're just understanding this process. Maybe so you didn't feel quite as silly, but still, if we're going to get it wrong, we'll get it wrong together. And then you worked as 4s or 5s. How did that feel? Why did that feel better? Speak up.
More knowledge in the group.
More knowledge in the group? The herd feel. Someone was anyone stepping up to be the leader? Yep. So usually when there's more than 2 or 3 of you, someone will emerge as a leader. Someone will say, hey, I think, you know, I think this is right, you know, or I think I've got this. Somebody will look more confident than you, or you will say, no, I think actually I've got this, you know, come on guys. So usually a leader emerges of some sort, yeah. And again, if you got it wrong, but does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. You know, because if you're all going to get it wrong, you all get it wrong. Now, in a real life situation, obviously as a CEO, I was making some big flaws there. I was not telling you why we were doing it. I was not giving you much communication. I was not giving you the instructions. I was just presuming that you'd got it. Initially, I was making you feel awkward and frustrated, so I wasn't really creating any buy-in because I was making you feel silly. Yeah, okay, so so I wasn't acting as a very good change manager, but what I did do is I started to realise that you were going to feel more comfortable in a group, you were going to feel more comfortable sharing the problem, sharing and owning the problem. And once we got going. Now, another thing that I often do with people is I always say, you know, put your hands out in front of you. This is a great one that you can do with anybody. I want you to just cross your arms. How does that feel? Yeah, normal, comfortable. Why? Why? Why does that feel normal, natural, comfortable, not a problem?
The way I've always done it.
Way that you've always done it?
It's sort of, we're defending ourselves from what's coming at us.
Yes.
Open point.
So you're used to having that, you know, crossing your arms. Okay. Normally you feel comfortable because that's the way you've always done it. Okay. That feels like normal. Okay. So put your hands out again, and this time I want you to do it the other way round. So I want you to put the other hand on top, and so do it the opposite that you normally do it. How did that feel? Bit odd. Not as comfortable.